Hello there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. The FDA just announced they're banning all Juul e-cigarettes in the U.S. I learned that from a Jimmy Fallon joke who said, yeah, no more Juul. That'll explain tomorrow when you see a bunch of your coworkers sucking on a Glade plug-in. It's a big deal because if they also ban fedoras, your old college roommate's going to have a nervous breakdown. Trevor Noah said, if you're one of those people who regularly likes to vape, first of all, congratulations on being basic. And second of all, you might want to stock up because your supply is about to run out. But this is a big move by the FDA because you realize Juul is the iconic vaping brand. So by them doing this, it's like going after soda by banning Coke or going after Coke by banning Don Jr. Trevor Noah for the win. I love that joke. Right before I was about to put the show to bed, I saw this one from TMZ. Dave Chappelle is the new owner of a hefty piece of property. Remember this whole thing with Dave Chappelle and the town in Ohio, and they wanted to do some real estate development and build some houses, and Dave thought it was going to ruin the town? Well, man put his money where his mouth is. Dave's reps confirmed to TMZ that Chappelle recently bought up several acres of Yellow Springs, Ohio land previously owned by the land developers, and that company had announced plans for a huge subdivision. But now Dave owns a bunch of the land. Good job, Dave Chappelle. I mean, assuming he doesn't just turn it into real estate development, I assume he wants to leave it the way it is. We'll see. Hey, Kim Kardashian, are you dumb or do you just play dumb for the brand? She was on with Jimmy Fallon and talked about hosting SNL. She said, I was nervous for a second because I have to be honest, I had never seen SNL before. I had gone to one taping of Eddie Murphy in 2019 and I had gone backstage. I knew what it was. It was so iconic. I got to be honest. Jimmy Fallon appeared stunned. Correctly so, Kim said. I knew what it was. It was so iconic. I gotta be honest. I had no idea you were on, Jimmy Fallon. Even a month after, I was at a dinner and Will Ferrell was sitting right next to me. The show had just aired when I was on and he had mentioned he had seen it. And I literally had to text Pete Davidson and be like, wait, was Will Ferrell on SNL? And I was so embarrassed. Yeah. True story or fun-ish story for Fallon. I don't trust anything when it comes to the Kardashians. I can't tell what's real or what's just for show. But hey, I'm talking about it, so it worked. Did you know 80 Bryant was on Saturday Night Live, Kim? Well, she just left, and Variety asked her, why did you decide to leave SNL? 80 said, if it weren't for COVID, I probably would have left a few years earlier. But it was such a huge change. When COVID hit, it was so jarring that we're all like, I'm definitely coming back next year. And then I had to shoot Shrill for half of last season, so I missed a lot. And then it was like, well, now I should go back for one more. I kept trying to seek one more last normal year. This year wasn't the normal year that I hoped for, but it was closer to that. It was like, all right, it's really time now. And 10 years felt like a nice, solid round number. Maybe in March or April, I went into Lauren's office and I was like, I got to talk to you. I was scared because I feel close to him and so grateful to him. I didn't want to come off like I was leaving angrily. I'm leaving with so much love. He was like, I understand, and it makes sense for you. It wasn't uncommon for me to work a 12-hour day on Shrill, then continue to work all day on SNL, and all night. It'd be like a 22-hour day. I can't do that anymore. Maybe I could in my mid-20s, but now I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm like, that's a wrap on those days. Variety was curious how 80 Bryant picked her last sketch. A couple weeks prior, one of the producers like, is there something you want to do? But I was worried it would feel like I was at my own funeral, and I don't feel like dying. I'm on to the next thing. I was embarrassed about trying to do something big. Her goodbye wound up being a weekend update segment with Bowen Yang and Michael Che. It felt very joyful. It felt very fortified by having Bowen and Che next to me because they know me and they know how considered this was for me to go. How about the after party is the biggest one? It's kind of overwhelming because it's 4 times the size of our regular after party. Maya Rudolph's band performed, which was fun. They're a Prince cover band. Ooh, I gotta look into that. Wait, Google Maya Rudolph Prince cover band. From 2016 Washington Post, Maya Rudolph's Prince-approved Prince cover band is keeping his songs alive. Really? The band is called Princess. Good name. Maya said, for us, it's not just Prince, it's what he created. It's the people he worked with, too. We're huge fans of Wendy and Lisa and the music they've continued to make. She was talking about doing a show in Minneapolis and said it was like Prince Fantasy Camp meets the living out of our dreams of being in the Revolution and being in Purple Rain. It was incredible. All right, we'll save that for a weekend filler some other day. Thank you, 80 Bryant, for that tangent. Anyway, Variety asked 80 Bryant, were there any hosts that surprised you? And she said, Kim Kardashian did so well and was up for anything. Not that she had ever seen SNL before or even knew that Will Ferrell or Jimmy Fallon were on it, because who would know that living in America? It's totally out of her wheelhouse, and it's very brave and cool she did it. Brave. From the Oxford Dictionary, brave is an adjective which means ready to face and endure danger or pain, showing courage. An example being a brave soldier. Kim Kardashian was very brave hosting Saturday Night Live. Variety asked Bryant, what was your reaction when you saw Kim and Pete Davidson were dating? She said, I'm not going to talk about that respectfully. I love him. Steven Wright's in Las Vegas this week. Las Vegas Weekly asked Steven Wright, hey, since you've been back on stage post-pandemic, have you noticed any difference in audiences and their reactions? Steven Wright said, and he probably said it much more deadpan than I will, and I'm pretty deadpan, I noticed they're 2 years older. Actually, I didn't notice any difference in response other than the political correctness that keeps growing. But maybe that was happening more than 2 years ago. It's a freaky thing. It's too much. LV Weekly, you don't really dive into political cultural issues much. Steven Wright, what could I possibly have that would do that? I'm talking about the speed of light and about lint. But it did affect a couple jokes. I'm sick of it. I feel like I left on a spaceship and came back 5 years later and a lot of the rules are different. If George Carlin was still around, I'd love to see what he'd be doing with this stuff. He would put it in a blender and make a fruit drink. Cristela Alonzo talked to the LA Daily News. Did you know Cristela Alonzo collects Lego? Who knew? She's been obsessed with Lego sets for years and is currently building the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Back-to-back mentions of Back to the Future on this podcast. Should I try and see if I can squeeze it in every day and see if you guys notice that I do that? That might be a little too much work, but maybe I'll do it. Pay attention. She also just ordered Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night and Transformers Optimus Prime Lego sets, which will be waiting at her LA apartment when she returns home. Cristela Alonzo says, I buy at least 2 sets every month. I describe my apartment as mid-century Pee-wee's Playhouse. You walk in the door and you don't know if a woman in her 40s lives there or a 14-year-old boy. But I love Legos. I think they're gorgeous and I think they're fun. And again, I didn't have them growing up, so I guess I'm just making up for lost time. The Guardian asked comedian Jen Brister, can you remember a gig so bad it's now funny? I loved this answer, which is why I put it in the show. Jen Brister, who I don't know and you probably don't know either, but she sounds funny, said, I did a gig in an all-inclusive holiday resort in Cyprus. It was 40 degrees, I assume that's Celsius, and the air conditioner in the venue had broken. Yes, it's Celsius. The first act wasn't from the circuit, and his jokes seemed to have been recycled from sets from the 80s. Annoyingly, he had the gig of his life. People went nuts. He had to bring me on, which he did by saying, I've got to go now, but sadly the next act is a woman. Ugh. The audience began booing, and I walked on stage to virtually no applause. I had to do 30 minutes. By the time I was 10 minutes in, 2/3 of the audience had left. The room was so hot, my face was bright red, and I was sweating profusely. I was conscious that I looked less like a comedian and more like a menopausal woman having a very public breakdown. When I got off stage, the promoter locked eyes with me and said, We've never booked a woman to do comedy before, and promptly walked off. My flight wasn't until 9 p.m. the next day, so I had to spend the day walking around the resort with a towel over my head so no one would recognize me. I mean, now I look back and think it's hilarious. I'm still traumatized. From Yahoo, Netflix content chief Ted Sarandos was at the Future of Entertainment panel at Cannes, and he received the Entertainment Person of the Year award. Really? I assume that's for industry only, like, I don't know, top of my head, Tom Cruise might have been a good choice. I don't know. Entertainment Person of the Year? Ted Sarandos? Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about him because he defended Dave Chappelle and Ricky Gervais. The Entertainment Person of the Year, Ted Sarandos said, we're programming to people with a real variety of tastes and sensibilities. There's a range in how they're brought up and what they think is offensive and what they think is damaging to themselves or to children. We won't make everybody happy. But that's the beauty of on demand. You can turn it off. The reason comedy is hard is we don't all laugh at the same thing. We all cry at the same thing, so drama is a little easier to pull off. But when it comes to comedy, it's very different. Also, it's not frozen in time. Those comedians who are good at what they do are always testing the audience. They know what gets laughs. It's road tested before they record the special. If you look back at Eddie Murphy's Delirious, at the time, it was the greatest hour of comedy ever filmed. Most of that material is pretty out of step today. I agree with that. Eddie Murphy says the same thing. I should deep dive on Delirious one day. I'm going to add that to the summer filler notes. I haven't really done summer filler yet, but there is a long weekend coming up July 4th. Maybe we'll deep dive on Delirious. Sarandos said it's almost impossible to censor Chappelle and that Netflix will fight for his content all the way to the Supreme Court. The platform has never taken Chappelle's special down anywhere in the world and never will. And from Cowboy State Daily, say it with me, you're home for comedy news. Will Ferrell made a few stops in Cody earlier this week, becoming pretty much a regular at one establishment. Ferrell got stuck in the area because of the recent flooding that closed Yellowstone National Park. Porter Corey, co-owner of City's Table, said Will Ferrell and his family came by her gourmet food market multiple times. He was just really nice, she said. Although he didn't make any memorable jokes or one-liners, Scott said Ferrell was complimentary and told her he was drawn to her business originally because of the font on her sign outside. She recommended that Will check out the historic Chamberlain Inn, and he took her up on the suggestion. Bill McPherson is the GM of the Chamberlain and said Will Ferrell was great. Will shared some drinks in the cocktail lounge with his party and said he would return later in the day, but McPherson is unsure if he actually did that. This is great. McPherson also said Will Ferrell was not showing off his comedic chops, but he was very polite and offered compliments for the Chamberlain, a historic hotel dating back to 1903 that has hosted guests such as Ernest Hemingway, Marshall Fields, and Larry LaRam. Who? Should I know who that is? I'm Googling it. A lot of Google today's episode. Larry LaRam. Oh yeah, Larry LaRam. Irving Hastings LaRam, known as Larry LaRam. He was the founding president of the Dude Ranchers Association. Now I know who that is. McPherson said Will was traveling with around 8 people in 3 RVs. He said they were going to stay at the Ponderosa campground. A representative from Ponderosa said she was unaware if Ferrell was staying there, but joked he may have been staying incognito. Boy, the folks at Cowboy State Daily did a lot of research on this story. Oh my God. This next sentence, I obviously didn't pre-read this. You ready? Here, let me back up a sentence. I'm just going to read this as is. A representative from Ponderosa said she was unaware if Ferrell was staying at the establishment, but joked that he may have been staying incognito. Ponderosa is next to Dairy Queen, which means Ferrell could have easily walked over to get himself a cone or a frozen treat. What? A manager at the Dairy Queen said he had no knowledge of Will Ferrell ever coming in. Corey, from the beginning of the article, said Will was heading to Livingston, Montana next and planned to fly out from Bozeman. And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, the rest, whatever. There's a Dairy Queen next to the Ponderosa. Bye.